Welcome back to Wizards of Light channel. I'm going to be doing some Lightburn tutorial today. I wanted to go over some tips and tricks, some of the things that I use on a daily basis that I don't see a whole heck of a lot of other people using, and I don't understand why, because I think they're great tips, and I wanted to go over some of those with you. I've got a list of them here on my phone, so if you see me looking at that, that is why. But we'll go ahead and get started. Alright, so let's switch over here. Now, Lightburn, when you first come into it, this is what you are looking at. One of the first things that you want to make sure that you have set up, obviously everyone talks about it, is your art library and your library. These are two very different libraries, but the first one, art library, this is where you can save all your kind of art that you make, different things that you want to save, that you may want to do again in the future. You use these to do that. Now, the way that you start making an art library, or let's say you wanted a new category here, you actually create a new file for that. And the file that you create, you can name it whatever you want, and that's what it will be called there. Now, you want to typically put all of these together. So if you look in my laser folder, I have all these LB art files. Now, these are all of those different library categories that we saw. If I wanted to make a new one, very simply, test for video, and I save that, you'll see it's going to pop up over here, test for video, and then I can start adding art to it. There's really two different ways to bring art into a library. The first one is if you have art on your workspace. Let me bring this calendar over, go back over here to test for video. Let's say that I wanted to add this Viking calendar to this folder. I would select it, and I would hit, I would hit import from graphic. It would ask for a name, and so I might just call it calendar and hit OK, and you'll see that that is now in there. So if I delete that out of there and I want it back, I can just drag and drop it back from that folder. That's the first way to get it in there. The second way to get art in there, and the way that I've used a couple of times, but not that many, is that you can use this import button. The import button is going to open your import files dialog box, and if you had a PDF, an SVG, an AI file, you can grab that. Let's just grab this class icon for monk and open it, and you'll see, oh, there it is right there. Added it. I can drag and drop it in, no problem. Well, that's interesting that that's not a closed shape. I'll have to fix that later. Anyhow, so that's art library. The other library is your materials library. This is super important. If you have a thunder laser like me, you can go to their support, and so the library, the materials library is super important. This is where you can keep all of your settings for the different materials. As I was saying, if you have a thunder laser and you go to their support site, you can download and then import an initial starting place for a materials library. This is something, though, that you'll tweak as you go along, and to make changes to one of them, you just double click it and it's going to open up. You can make the changes and hit OK, and it will save those changes to that. Biggest thing here is you do want to hit save when you're done making any types of changes to this, because otherwise those changes are temporary. They will go away. All right. let's talk about, let me look at my list here. So using X and Y positioning and math to move objects around. So what I mean by that is, let's first take a square, put it on screen, and select it. All right, actually let's do 2 squares. All right, so let's grab these 2 squares and line them up edge to edge like that, okay? The other thing you can do in here is with sizing. So let's say that you wanted to cut this box in half exactly, and there's a couple of different ways to do it. You can hit divide by 2 on the height, and boom, it's now exactly half height, okay? You can multiply by 2 to get it back to the original height. That's the one way. The second way is you can just hit 50% here, and it does the same thing. That's great for percentages. You can use this for all different kinds of things. I use you know, the X and Y position movement stuff when I'm lining stuff up. So let's say, let me get rid of this box. Turn this into a tool layer rather than a engrave layer. Let me grab a line here. Now, as I drag this line down, you hit click once, it selects it, and then you drag down. You don't have to hold it, but if I hold shift down, it's going to make that a straight line, no matter, well, until you get to a 45. But it'll go up and down, or it'll go 45 or 90. It'll go all the way around, but at those angles only. And so it'll do that. Okay, whoops. Now, let's see. Let's move this line. So grab both of these. Let's line these up like this. Okay, this gives me a little handle to grab onto. So let's say that I want this line. Let's say that I'm laying out a project. So let's say that I wanted to move this over 20 millimeters. I can easily just go plus 20. That helps me start lay things out. And then if I wanted to duplicate that and do another one, maybe 10 mil over for my next line up, whatever I'm aligning, I can do that. So that's using the math to do that. So we talked about using the X and Y position. That, of course, works on the Y position as well. If I needed to move it down 10 millimeters, I can add 10 to it, and it'll move it down 10, or subtract 10 to move it back up. That all works there as well. And this really helps when I'm doing like tumblers and things, and I'm laying out the tumbler, and I want to know where that top edge is, and then where the engravable portion begins, where any logos might be. This is how I would lay that out. Let's say that you're looking at a cup, and let me grab a cup. Let's see, does this one have a logo on it? Not one that I didn't engrave, but looking at this cup that I engraved, if we look at this side, if I wanted to make sure that I didn't engrave on this part here, where it's already engraved, I could measure from the bottom to there, and then I could use this to give myself a line and put it exactly from the bottom up where I want it to be, so that based on where that logo is, and then I know I'm not going to hit that logo. So, okay. The other thing is that I don't see a lot of people doing. I don't understand why. I don't understand why Lightburn comes defaulted this way. But what it does is, if you look under Window, it will have Arrange on, and it will have Arrange Long off. Now, Arrange gives you a few options for arranging things, and then the rest of these you have to drop them down to do. I hate that. Absolutely hate it. So I turn that one off, and I turn the long one on, because it gives me quick access to each of those individually. So let's say I wanted to center these up. I could quickly do that. Now we're centered. If as far as alignment goes, that's great. Sizing, right? So let's add another box, but I want this box to be exactly the same size as this box here. So I select both of them, and then I hit this button. That makes it the same width. And then I hit this button, and that makes it the same height. Now, if I want those boxes to be centered on each other, I can do it two ways. I can hit this button and then this button, and that will center vertically and then horizontally, or you can hit the bullseye, which will center it horizontally and vertically at the same time. So those are great tools to use as well. The mirroring tools, you know, this is, you're not going to see it there. Let me take one of these and flip it. So if you mirror it, obviously you're just flipping it either horizontally or vertically. So let's talk about these tool layers that we're looking at. So in Lightburn, there's two different tool layers. The first one, T1, this tool layer. So let's say that you have this box that you created, and you're doing your alignment stuff in here with it. You can make that tool layer T1 part of the frame or not. Now, if it's part of the frame, what does that mean? Well, what it simply means is if we grab some, well, here, let me get rid of these real quick. Let's grab, we'll just grab that there. Now, if you grab this center box here and then drag it to roughly the center of this, it should snap like that. See the icon change? It snapped. And if you move it a little bit, it doesn't move until you move it a little further off axis. Now that's directly in the center. I don't have to bullseye it. I know it's in the center. Okay. But when you're sending this to the laser, if this toolbox, this orange box around here is the work area, and I have the laser aligned so that, well, right now it's in the middle at the top. If I aligned it that way in my work area and hit send, everything would work fine because I have this as part of the frame. However, if I didn't, even though I have that box selected, you see that green origin point drop down to the top of the hand? It was up here, and it dropped down to here. Now, when you send that, wherever you have that laser head, that's literally where it's going to start. It's not going to move down to where you want it to be. So that's why frame is important. Now, the blue, let me switch those back, sorry. The blue tool layer, let me draw another box here, and we'll do that one as the blue tool layer. Blue tool layer, now, oh, well, that's interesting. So Lightburn gets updates all the time. In previous to version 1.0, the blue tool layer was not frameable. It wasn't able to be included in part of the frame. Now it is. So now you can use these interchangeably, which I think is great. I don't know why they didn't do that in the beginning, but they didn't. But they've done it now. So really there's no difference between the two tool layers now. They do exactly the same thing. Okay, let's move on. So keyboard shortcuts. If let's say I want a duplicate of this, I can go up here to, I think it's an edit. See, I don't even know because I use a tool, the keyboard shortcut, but I can hit duplicate here. Boom. Now I have a duplicate of that, and I can move it away. Okay. But on the keyboard, I can quickly just hit Control and D, and now I have a duplicate. Some of the other ones, what are the other ones that we use a lot? So grouping and ungrouping, Control G, Control U, right? There's a couple of ways to do this. You can use the icons up here and group things together like that. So now this is one group. So when I select one of them, I select all of them. Or I can hit Control U to ungroup it. Now when I select one of them, I'm only selecting one of them. Okay. Control G to group. Now it's grouped. Control U to ungroup. Now it's ungrouped. Keyboard shortcuts, depending on what you're doing, can really save you a lot of time. There's certain ones that I use constantly. There's other ones that I just don't use very often. If there's a button up here, like for the group and ungroup, I tend to use those over the keyboard shortcuts. But if there's not, like there's not one for duplicate, I use the keyboard shortcut constantly. Control C, Control V, everyone knows those. Cut and paste, those work here just the same as you'd expect. I can copy, and then I can paste, and you get a new one. It's not exactly centered on top of it like the duplicate does. Which is good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's just, it does the same thing as duplicate. It does it in 2 steps rather than 1. That's the only difference, really. Okay. So learn your keyboard shortcuts. If you don't know what they are, go up to the menus, find what you're looking for, and then try to start using the keyboard shortcuts. Another keyboard shortcut that I use all the time is, oops, I just moved my desk, sorry. Thought I had that locked. Is Alt-Shift-W, okay? What that does is turns on and off the wireframe or fill. So why would I want that? Well, let's say that I wanted to edit this, edit the nodes on this to fix this, whatever the issue is here, right? I can see that it's not filled in this way, but here I might turn it off so that I can find where the break is, right? Which is probably right here. Yep. So if I just snap those together, I can hit Alt-Shift-W and quickly see that it's done. But you can see that when, let's say that I wanted to edit some other nodes in here, they're a lot harder to see when, let me select this one and I'll show you what I mean. They're a lot harder to see. They are much harder to see the nodes when it's filled in as to opposed when you have the wireframe. So I switch a lot when I'm doing node editing, and that really does help. But typically I leave it in filled. It helps me remember what I have each one set to as a fill or a line. I don't have to look over at your cuts and layers to see that. Now you can switch this, where is it at? In window. So you can switch it to coarse, and I don't know if you saw that, but basically what it does is it doesn't remove any of these aliasing. Aliasing is this jagged edge here. That jagged edge isn't really there. That's just the video driver, and because it's set to coarse, it's not smoothing that out. If we set it, where's that window? If we set it back to smooth, you can see most of that aliasing goes away for the most part. It shrinks it down quite a bit, and it just looks nicer. Depending on what you're doing, you can turn it on smooth or coarse. If you need a little bit more of the processing power of your computer for other things, turn it on coarse and leave it on coarse. You can do that also with the wireframe. You can either do it as coarse or smooth. Now with this, I would say never do it as coarse. It's the wireframe. It's not going to take that much processing to smooth out the wireframe. And you need to be able to see what it actually looks like. You know, I mean, obviously, if you're on coarse and you zoom in, it's still going to look okay for the most part. And if you really wanted to know, okay, are those nodes? What are those? Why does it look jagged? You can just pull up the nodes and see, oh no, it's just because it's set to coarse. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the differences on the fill modes. Whoops, W, turn that back on. So we have fill, we have fill in line, and we have offset fill. if you saw there, nothing changed on the screen, even though we have this set to fill. All right, so let's talk about the differences here. All right, so fill, when we preview this, I have to select it. We'll just select the piece of the thumb there. Makes it nice and easy. We see that what the laser is going to do is move down and then go back and forth and draw those lines in and fill it in. Okay, pretty simple. Let's look at fill in line and then look at that again. Now what it's going to do, the laser is going to come down to the bottom, it's going to fill that in, but then when it's done, it's going to draw a line around the entire object. That really helps define it. If you're doing something where maybe the contrast isn't super good and you need it to be a bit sharper, you can do that. I don't ever do that for the most part. I did it when I first got the laser until I realized that my offsets weren't entered. Once I entered in my offsets, I never had to do that again because the engrave works the way it should. Okay, so that's fill and fill plus line, but there's this last one that says offset fill. What the heck is offset fill? Offset fill is kind of cool. Look at that. Okay, so it's going to fill it. Rather than doing just horizontal lines, it does vector shapes, shrinking all the way down. Actually starts in the middle, starts with the smallest one and then works its way out. But it does vector shapes. Now, what is that? Why would you do that? This sometimes helps with text to make the text a bit easier to read. Depending on what you're engraving into, you might want to do this to get a better consistency of the engraved portion of either the type of wood or plastic or acrylic, whatever you're engraving on. It just depends. But I've used this a few times, and it can really help. Now, it does affect your time. Let's see, total elapsed or total time is 3 seconds with that fill. With the normal fill, how long is it? May not be much of a difference. It's 1 second. It's 3 times slower to do the offset fill in this case. However, offset fill, I've seen cases where doing offset fill actually increase the speed. It just depends on the image and what it needs to do. But yeah, that's the differences. So if we were to look at this offset fill for the whole thing, let's continue. You'll see how it's going to do it, and it's going to take a minute and 3 seconds to do this whole hand. And if we did normal fill, it would continue. Take 27 seconds. So, yep. That is the differences of fill. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, one of the other things that I was having some luck with doing was using this move dialog box. What this does is you can move your laser around. You can jog it around just like you can on the control panel of the laser. If you're a diode laser user, you kind of have to use this. I don't think most of those have control panels. Some might, but I don't think most do. So you would have to use these, but you can use these with CO2 lasers as well. You can enter in exact positioning and have the laser head move there. When you hit go, it will move there. You can also save positions, and you can see that I have a couple saved here, and that's because like when I set my rotary up, I like to set it up in the same spot on the laser, and then all I have to do is hit go, and this centers my laser directly above the rotary. Now, I will caution you with this, that if you have something like the rotary in there and you have not lowered it enough and you hit go, you will crash your head into it and it will be a bad day, a very bad day. Don't do that. So anyhow, so the rotary is one reason why I use it. You might use it. Diode laser users, I think, would probably use this a lot because they could set up a template and have the saved position be their starting point. I think. Then again, they might just use absolute positioning, which is what absolute coordinates does. That I don't use that. I use user origin that lets me decide where I want it. And, you know, like right now it's set to the top dead center. Typically I would go in a corner if I'm doing a square piece. If I'm doing a circle or something, I'll go directly in the center, and that puts it right there. And then you center your laser head directly above that spot, and you're lined up and ready to go. So I've got some other ideas to do some kind of more in-depth tutorials on these things. So if you have ideas of things that you kind of want to learn, I can certainly make a video for that, a stream about it, whatever we might want to do. So just let me know. But for now, I think we'll call it there for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the Lightburn tutorial. And I might do another stream a little later. I've got to finish the 100-acre wood sign for my friends. Their Winnie the Pooh 100-acre wood sign. It's on a round. I did yesterday a different sign for them. It's this overlook sign from The Shining. Right here. This is for my buddy's mom. So it's the overlook, and then on the back we put the "You'll Never Leave" from the poster, and then of course my logo over here. I need to clean that up and get that oiled. We're just going to do a Danish oil on that to protect it, seal it. But I've got the round over here. This is for the 100-acre wood sign that they want made. So, but for now, I appreciate it. Wizards of Light signing off. Have a great one.